Hey everybody, it is Yafa. How are you all? Let me make sure everything is adjusted. Yeah. All right. Fabulous. So glad to be coming back to you with our second part of ADHD teens, what they need you to know. Um, I do hope you got a lot from last week's session. We got some really good feedback, and I will send you this recording in about an hour and a half when we're done with this session. And I will also send you the link to schedule your free coaching session. Please don't forget to do that. You don't have an unlimited amount of time to do the scheduling. So I would suggest that you do the scheduling, and then if you need to change it, you can change your scheduling on your own. But you need to have it scheduled by a week from today. Yeah, a week from today. You have to have it scheduled. You don't have to complete the session until October 15th. So if you don't know where you're going to be around October 15th, just schedule something anyway, because otherwise the link will not be active anymore, and so you won't be able to schedule it. So that's my concern. Okay. Let me just arrange a few things. I guess I can't. Okay, hold on one sec. I have no idea why I'm coming off with a shadow, because it's really bright in here, but all right. So let us get started. Okay, so we're going to recap first. We learned about what's going on in the brain of a teen, of an ADHD teen, that makes it a very dramatic time for both teens and parents. We also learned about things outside of ourselves as teens or outside of our teens that can contribute to the turmoil. And of course, the implication being these are things to look out for that might be going on with your teen that would help explain some of the mood swings you might see or the frustration. It is extremely frustrating to be it's really weird to be a teen in school with teachers that don't understand teens. That's very weird, but it happens. And it's also weird to be in school as a teen with ADHD because there's all that peer pressure and you're supposed to look a certain way and act a certain way. All that individuality, so to speak, is actually just this new culture that you come into, which is teen culture. And there's a lot of pressure to fit in. And so if you don't fit in, you may stand out in a very uncomfortable way. That happens to adults too, of course. But most teens are way more wrapped up in the whole idea of fitting in than presumably adults are. Okay. So I asked you to look at common triggers to pair up or team up with your parenting partner or partners and to look at some common triggers. If you did not get a chance to do that, let me suggest a few. So I'm going to go to my phone also here, doing double duty as your hostess. So common triggers are getting bad news, being hungry, having to do something that interrupts something that they feel very attached to. It doesn't have to be an emotional attachment. It could be sort of an energetic attachment where they feel their attention is attached to the thing. Losing someone that they love or being separated from someone that they love or something, like if it's a dog or a cat or a pet. Being sick can often be a trigger because you're not at your best. And low blood sugar can be a trigger. it can also be phrases that you might say, like, um, like I used to, I mean, I think it's important for people to be able to say, stop doing that, um, or no, or something like that. But I associate one word responses as like not one word responses, but one word um, demands, I guess. I don't know if that's the exact right word, as if I were being spoken, as if I were being spoken to, as if I were like a dog. So if somebody says, stop, or Yafa, stop, it makes me feel like a dog. Um, I don't like that. I mean, I think you should say sentences. Um, I can't talk about this right now. I would rather not talk about this right now, instead of saying stop. Um, it just is really disrespectful to me. So that's going to be a trigger for me. So it's important to look at, the different triggers. And even though we have triggers, well, we ourselves have triggers as parents, and it's important to know our triggers so that we can understand when we're being triggered, and the difference between being triggered and whether this is like an emergency, horrible type of situation. Um, I have a friend. She is such a good parent. I mean, such a good parent. She and her adult daughter call each other bitch. And I just think that's very weird. And it makes me super uncomfortable to like, uh, like, did you eat the last cookie, bitch? And it was like, I just can't stand that. I can't stand hearing that. They think it's fine. So we need to, I mean, there are, of course, things that we are not going to tolerate. Um, sort of, we can't tolerate, we have a hard time tolerating them. But at the same time, if we let them affect us, then we're losing our power. So that's the tricky part. So that's why it's also important to find out our common triggers and to talk to your kids about, your teens about their triggers, because when they are triggered, they also lose their power. And it's important to feel powerful without overpowering anybody else. All right, behavior and maturity. So this is a chart that you may have heard of. It's Abraham Maslow. It was designed in 1943. It's the hierarchy of needs. And the point of this pyramid is that, not like the food pyramid, let's just put that way first, but the base of the pyramid has the bottom line needs that people have, and they are at a physiological level. So you've got a basic need for breathing, a basic need for food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep. Those are bottom line needs for every person. Unless those needs are being met, and notice that sleep is one of them. Just saying. Why, I talk a lot about how sleep is very important, and this is why. When those needs aren't being met, any person, a person, just refers to anybody in the world, cannot go to the next level, which is this gold color. And unless those needs on the gold level aren't met, you can't go to the yellow level, etc. So what's very interesting is things like morality, creativity, spontaneity, etc. At the purple level, at self-actualization, is the pinnacle that comes from development. So you have these needs and you meet these needs, or you master these needs in the sense that you learn how to get your needs met. And until you can get those needs met, you can't move on. So remember how I talk about connection being so important? If you look at the middle one, the yellow one, love and belonging, it says sense of connection. If there's no sense of connection, and we're going to talk about that in a second, they can't go to the next level, which is confidence, achievement, respect of others, the need to be a unique individual or being a unique individual. So it's really important to make sure that you've got the bases covered from the bottom up. What I did, I made a second pyramid, the one on the right, that took the example from the hierarchy of needs and moved it to the realm of executive function, because actually this hierarchy of needs is also called a hierarchy of motivation. So when we talk about motivating kids, we could see what needs to be done first, second, third. So at the basic level, somebody needs to be able to memorize and follow simple directions, like, like come here, simple directions. The next is they can take care of their physical needs, and they understand boundaries. They understand yes versus no. They may not follow boundaries, but they need to understand them, and they need to understand yes and no. They need to understand this is me and this is you. That differentiation. And they can take care of their physical needs. As far as executive function, you can kind of trace the development of the brain. Then they can initiate tasks, and they can monitor themselves. That is pretty low on the chart, but understand that boundaries comes before that. If you don't understand boundaries, don't understand yes and no, don't have a sense of sort of a do this, not that, or I will do this and I won't do that. It's really hard to initiate tasks on your own or to monitor yourself. Now, once you can initiate tasks, meaning, honey, I need you to wash the dishes today. And then they do that at some point today. It's not that you don't tell them, but it's without being told like right before it's done. So put on your shoes, and then they put on their shoes right away. That's not task initiation. We're going out tonight. We're going to, grandma's for a big dinner, and we're all dressing up. So please, excuse me. So please make sure you're super dressed up tonight. And then, 6 hours later, they come out and they're all dressed up. That's task initiation. So then comes organization, focus, flexible thinking, emotional control, and impulse control. Once you can start to do things on your own, task initiation and self-monitoring, then you can get into things like organization, focus, etc. And once you've got those mastered or nearly mastered, then you can get into motivation, planning, prioritizing, follow through, etc. So remember, the brain is reforming, restructuring from the back to the front. Here's the prefrontal cortex, where the executive functions are formed, and mastery is demonstrated because of the work of this area. And you can see that some of the things that we worry the most about our children accomplishing are pretty high-level tasks. And again, we need to look at this left side also. We need, as parents, to be focusing on the left side so that they can start learning how to do the right side. If these things aren't met, then, like, if the physiological needs aren't met, you're not going to be, memorizing anything or following simple directions. If if the second level isn't being mastered or met, those needs, it's going to be really hard to take care of the rest on the other side. So I hope this helps you understand. Remember, you can't jump levels, and you have to have, it has to go in order, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, next. Okay, emotional regulation. I love this picture. So I want to talk to you about how to work with your teen as far as emotional regulation goes. First of all, kids don't always understand, or they can't always identify the emotions that they're feeling. And people, including adults, very often confuse a negative thought with an emotion. So I feel stupid is not an emotion. Um, I feel ashamed, or I feel scared. Those are emotions. But um, just because you put the word feel in front of it doesn't mean it's an emotion. So just because, like, I feel like I'm the biggest idiot on the face of the planet is not an emotion just because you put feel in front of it. It's a negative thought. And those are handled differently. Negative thoughts are not handled in the same way as emotions as far as working through them. So, because a negative thought, it's not an insult to tell someone with a negative thought, just say the opposite to yourself, because that's actually a good technique for getting rid of a negative thought and building positive thinking, is to say the positive version of it. I think I'm the stupidest person on the planet. You can say, not I'm not the stupidest person on the planet, but the real opposite, which is I am one of the smartest people on the planet. That one of could be pretty broad, so don't worry about, well, it's not true. You don't know if it's not true. Granted, you may not be Einstein, but that doesn't mean that you're not one of the smartest people on the planet. Um, um, so, but you don't say to somebody who's sad, "Oh, just feel happy." Like you don't do that with emotions, but you can do it with negative thoughts. That's why it's important to differentiate, because we can get caught up in a story that we tell ourselves about who we are and how we always feel. And there's nothing I can do about it because it's how I feel. And that's incorrect. So, all right. So remember, we talked about this before. And I actually cannot see what the first line says because it's covered up by something on my screen, the recording thing. So I'm trying to, hang on. Can your teens, I don't know what it says. Dang, that's frustrating. So we talked about this slide in the last session. And so when you're talking about emotions and emotional regulation with your teens, it's important to make sure that the environment is emotionally secure, physically secure, that it's okay, not okay, that it's encouraged to ask for help. It's not okay to ask for help, it's encouraged. Same with making mistakes. Is it encouraged? Like, try this. If you make a mistake, what's the worst that can happen? If that's the kind of language you use in your home, then that is encouraging mistakes. Risk taking, as opposed to, sort of this daredevil, put my life on the line. I just mean risk taking, like, listen, why don't you ask her out? I mean, you may regret it, down the line. So Yeah, ask her out. That kind of thing. Um, and are you protecting yourself, or are you allowing yourself to be teachable? Okay. Relationships. And I'm talking about not primarily relationships with you, but relationships that teens have with their friends, with somebody they're intimate with or want to be intimate with, or even with teachers. Excuse me. Just checking the time. I want to make sure we're on time. Okay. So really important. Teens are either in relationship with someone or something, or they're not. There really isn't an in-between for teens. And that's really important to understand. That sort of meh attitude is usually, though not always, a signal that they're not in relationship with what is being talked about. It could be school. How's school? It's okay. You know, how was swimming? It was okay. Mhm. Um, so it can mean they're out of relationship with that thing, meaning that there isn't a connection. And remember, we have talked about how important connection is. Um, you're going to get traction when connection is present. So, two, if a teen isn't feeling a connection with somebody, or that connection is broken, it can be very disheartening, depending on what the situation is. If they don't feel a connection with school and they have to go to school every single day, imagine how difficult that is. Yes, everybody has to go to school. It's the law. Yes. But some people don't have a hard time with the gray areas of life. And for people with ADHD, that has to do with it's like a maturity that comes with executive function development. Um, being able to postpone gratification has an emotional component to it, but it's also an executive function. You have to be emotionally mature to be able to defer or put off gratification. At the same time, the ability to do that is an executive function. Interesting. So if there isn't an emotional connection, it may be very, very difficult to do all the other things they're supposed to do. And so that's obviously a big deal. Um, when teens, so teens tend to go through, especially girls, tend to go through these dramatic coming togethers and breakups. And because they're teens dealing with teens, sometimes they are very ill-timed. Um, when I was teaching, it was pretty common for a guy or a girl to break up during lunch or during what was called like nutrition or snack, whatever you call it. Um, and then they'd have to come to class, all like brokenhearted. And so it was really common to have these crying people in your class, or in the case of boys, they might be extra angry because they're not allowed to cry because people will laugh at them. So it's important not to judge the breakup or to like deny your child their sort of like due process. Like if somebody breaks up with them, they're allowed to be sad. That's part of the deal, that's part of the process. And what they need from you is comfort, a listening ear, and encouragement. not encouragement like, oh, he wasn't worth it, but encouragement like, I know this is really hard for you, and I want you to know that we love you, and we will do what we can to support you. And you can, if this is a hard time, and if you need extra support from us, that's just fine with us. We're here for you. That's encouragement, not not like, he was nothing. You can get over it. No big deal. Suck it up. All those things. That's not what I mean. And the reason many relationships break up is due to the lack of effective communication. So while you're learning to communicate with your teen, you are also teaching them how to communicate with other people. And if you've got two teens that know how to communicate, then the breakup may be sad, but it may not be as devastating because they've talked about it. Okay, communication. So this is how most people do communication when the topic is challenging. They, if I don't talk about it, it's not real. I have to say that is my first inclination for sure. Let's see what happens if I don't talk about it. There. Putting the water cap on because I really don't want it to spill on me. Okay, so again, my first inclination would be like, yeah, if I don't talk about it, what'll happen? But what I've found for myself is that my biggest reason for not talking about something is that I don't want to hurt the other person. And what I've found is that it's more hurtful to withhold communication because the thing you're trying to shield them from happens anyway, whatever it is. So whatever your fear is about communication, it's good to know it. And it's also good to do the really, really scary, scary thing and take a step forward and do communicate. Your freedom lies in communication. The other person's freedom lies in communication also, even though it may be painful. I used to be like, if I tell this person how I feel, they're going to want to kill themselves, literally. So I wouldn't tell that thing to a person because I thought they would literally kill themselves. Honestly, that's what I thought. So you can imagine a few things I told people because I really thought they were going to kill themselves. And when I did start telling people things that I thought would hurt them, it was pretty terrifying because I still thought, even though people were telling me it's not going to happen, I still felt like this is going to happen. Or I thought this is going to happen. And so here I am doing what I know I need to do. And I'm terrified. It's hard, but it's important that people understand you, and it's important that you understand other people. So communication is pretty key. Ugh. So I have this thing called fearless listening, something I made up. I mean, that's what I call it. That's what I made up. Fearless listening, let's say you're doing it between you and your child or teen. You need to be attentive. So phones down, TV off. You're not waiting for a text. Excuse me. It's also non-judgmental and non-correcting. And what I mean by that is not that you agree with what happened, but that when you are listening, when the person is talking to you, it's not helpful to judge it negatively or or to correct a behavior. If they're telling you something difficult, then they're telling you something difficult. And that is a wonderful thing for your child to do, is to tell you something that's difficult for them to talk about. If you're judgmental or correcting about it, like, how stupid do you have to be to get pregnant? Or, do you have no brains? You just crashed the car last week. Or, um, I can't believe that I have a liar in my house. You know, I hate people that lie, which basically you just said you hate your kid. You may not have meant it, but that's what you said. So those kind of things are detrimental to constructive listening. And fearless listening, it's called fearless because it's scary to listen to the deep stuff that your kids may have to talk to you about. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean you agree or that you approve. It just means you're not going to take a stance where you judge or correct. You're going to be loving, not on the offense and not on the defense either. So we've talked about this before. If you don't take things personally, then it's easier to be loving. Or you could say, the fact that they're telling you this is so huge. I mean, if you have a teen that's confiding in you, that's huge. That's huge. So for you to get defensive or go on the offense is, in effect, it's just like, just push them away. I mean, just push them away. It's a lot clearer. Instead, it's important to be loving. If your teen says, I really don't like it when you do blah, 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 that's huge. That's an important conversation. Talk to me about that. I want to hear what your point of view is, because people misunderstand each other all the time. And so it could be that they're thinking that X means Y, and you're like, oh no, that's not what I meant at all. Oh my gosh. Somebody said to me, oh, I was having this conversation with somebody, and she thought, so I'm like talking to her, and she thought that I was telling her to do the opposite of what she was telling me she was doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, no. Like, no, you must have felt freaked out listening to me. No, I was absolutely not saying, don't do that. Keep doing what you're doing. Wow. I'm so sorry that you heard it that way. I definitely didn't mean that. And I didn't think I was saying that, but she was bold enough to say, are you saying X? And I was like, no. So what we know in our heads to be true it may be that we're not conveying it verbally. And so it's important to have these conversations, super important. And also be self-reflective. Wow, I do that. I'm so sorry. I really need to work on that. Whatever it is, maybe it's your tone of voice, and maybe your teen tape records you and you doing something, and you can hear your tone of voice, and you're all like, how dare you take me, instead of, oh my gosh, you're right, I sound really mean. Like, I need to work on that. So being self-reflective is really important. It's honest. Self-reflection is honest. And that's what teens need from everybody, is being honest and being authentic and being themselves. That's what teens really want. Motivation. Okay, there's tons to say about motivation. I have several classes on my website about these things. I'm just giving you the sort of the teen version of them. So if you want to dive in more about motivation or emotional regulation, behavior, and can't remember the other ones, but if you go to my website under classes, you can find classes on these things, which really go in depth and talk about teens. But this is a class about teens, so I'm covering a lot of topics where if you get the class, then you're diving into that one subject much more deeply. So let's talk about motivation, because I have a different view of motivation than a lot of people do. So I'm just going to give you one example. Okay, so the conventional thinking is that, well, everybody knows there's intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when you're motivated by something outside yourself, like, and the conventional thinking says it's a reward. Intrinsic motivation is when you're motivated by something inside yourself, and conventional thinking says that that's the best. So intrinsic motivation would be, I do it because it's the right thing to do, or I do it because it makes me feel good about myself. And you're not really motivated unless you're intrinsically motivated, according to conventional wisdom, conventional thinking. I completely disagree with this. I think a lot of wonderful things have come into the world because of extrinsic motivation, like being able to support your family. Is you go to work because you get a paycheck. Most people would not work if they didn't need the money or the paycheck. If you need the paycheck, that's extrinsic motivation. And yet, we don't fault people for that. And because it's okay. It's okay to go to work for a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with it. So I think we have put way too much emphasis on intrinsic motivation. So a parent will call me and say, how do I get my child to want to do their homework? And it's like, okay, so that's not going to happen. So don't worry about getting them to want to do their homework. That's very rare. Even for people that love school and love thinking, like, school is not homework. Homework is when you get home and then you still have to do more work. Home should be, in my opinion, should be a place to relax. So what does motivate ADHD kids? And there's way more things than this. And not all of these fit every ADHD kid, but here are some examples of things that motivate ADHD kids. And it depends on the situation also. Money, screen time, leadership opportunities, which is also power opportunities, chance to see that they are powerful and can lead or manage a situation. Getting appreciation could be some physical thing like snuggling or hugging, getting a gift, spending more time with you. That is often something that kids say they want. They want to spend more time with their parents. If you do something for them, like maybe you do one of their chores, or you, I don't know, you make them a sandwich. It could be anything, really. Freedom, big deal. Food, some like going out to a special place for dinner, or a special place for dessert, or making them their favorite dinner. And apologies are very motivating. Now, that doesn't mean that if you want them to do their homework, you apologize ahead of time for something that doesn't have anything to do with homework. So that doesn't really fit. And some of these don't fit, like, I'm going to give you a gift before you do your homework. I don't know. I guess it could happen. But there's a time and a place for all of these. And again, your child won't be necessarily motivated by each and every one of these things. Um, I don't like for instance, I mean, I'm not a child, but I don't like gifts because I don't like stuff. Um, I would rather have somebody like take me somewhere special or send me somewhere special. Like a massage is good, but not like a gift that's a thing. Um, I would rather get a facial or get a massage, something like that, an experience. But I don't like things. So giving me, um, even if it's a small thing, it doesn't matter. I just don't like things. Okay. All right. What about risky behaviors? Let me check the time, see how much time we have. Okay. All right. Risky behaviors. Okay. Unprotected sex, smoking and vaping, alcohol and drugs, disordered eating, and self harm. So let me say that it's, yes, it has been documented that kids with ADHD are more likely to engage in risky behavior. Some of it has to do with being impulsive. Some of it has to do with magical thinking. Um, you know, we won't get pregnant this time. Or, I don't know, like, I won't get in a crash this time, even though I've, had a bottle of wine or something. Um, but also, and this is really important, your child may be on no dosage of medication or supplements or the wrong dosage of medication or supplements or the wrong supplements or medication. If you're on the wrong amount, then you're going to do things that will raise your level of probably dopamine. And risky behavior raises your level of dopamine. So, and dopamine is one of the things that's low in people with ADHD. You can Google what raises dopamine and you can find all kinds of stuff to do that. So, what's happening is, as I always say, the brain wants what the brain wants. If your brain is missing a crucial chemical to function, it's going to seek it out. It's just what it does. And for some people, that's with disordered eating. For some people, it's with unprotected sex. It just depends on the person. But each of these 5 things can give someone the jolt of dopamine that they're looking for. So it's important to kind of, keep that in the background. It's not just a teen thing of experimentation. It's not just impulsivity, but behind that is the need for some chemicals that are probably low in your child. Okay. We're going to talk about next steps, and then we're going to answer some questions. Actually, let's answer some questions first. How can you tell if they're in fight, flight, or freeze? It's a good question. Okay, if your teen is in fight, they're going to be screaming at you probably. If they're in flight, they're going to walk away, get out of the way, go away from you. They're going to want to be alone. They're probably going to clam up. And if they're in freeze, they may just stand there and just say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Or and I'm not laughing at them, I'm just laughing at the discomfort of me saying that over and over again. Or they may sit and play video games and just be like frozen in front of a video game or a TV or something else addictive or possibly addictive. How can you tell if you're connecting with your teen? Oh, good question. I love these questions. Okay. How can you tell? If your teen is sticking around to talk to you, that's one way to tell. If your teen, it's almost, this sounds so gross, but it's almost like how you can tell if somebody is attracted to you. Like, do they want to hug you? Do they want to talk to you? Do they want to do things with you? Do they ever buy you something or do something just to get your appreciation? Those are ways you can tell if you're connecting with your teen. If you ask them to do something and the thing gets done, you're connecting. And I know that sounds, well, to me, it sounds like it could be interpreted as a harsh thing to say. And I don't mean it as a harsh thing, because I think a lot of us, many, many, many of us, don't connect with our teens, not because we aren't trying, but because we're like here's the train track, but we're like walking beside it kind of thing. Because what we've been taught is that what we're doing is important. And what I believe is that how the other person responds is what is important. That we may be doing things the right way, but if they don't connect with the other person, if the other person doesn't speak that language, then we need to figure out what language they do speak, so to speak. How can you tell if your teen is listening? Oh man. You know, so people assume if they look you in the eye, they're listening. And that's not necessarily so. People assume that if they're not looking at you, they're not listening. That's not necessarily so. If they're drawing, they aren't listening to you. If they're humming, they aren't listening to you. None of that is a way to tell if your teen isn't listening. If they are talking to someone else, they're not listening to you. If they're texting, they're probably not listening to you. Emailing, same thing. So if they're communicating with somebody else, they're not communicating with you, is, the simple way to put it. Also, you can put in sort of safe ways to check with them, like I just want to make sure that I said what I needed to say. So what did you hear? And that is valuable because it's not just testing whether they heard or not. It's whether you said it the way you meant to say it. So sometimes we do this thing where we think, oh, I'll just, check and make sure he heard what I said or she heard what I said. Where what I'm suggesting is that we check that we said what we meant. Hopefully you see the difference there. It's really a crucial difference. How do you know when your kid is ready for more freedom? So, it's good to think in your head, like, if I were going to do a sort of a stepping stone or a ladder of increasing freedom, what activities would I be putting at each of those steps? And let's say they just showed that they can handle step 2. And you think, well, let's try step 3. You try step 3, it doesn't go so well. It's not time to try it. It's fine. No big deal. Just go back to step 2. It's not, it doesn't feel so bad as if you went from step 2 to step 8. nobody can go from step 2 to step 8. One of my friends wrote a book called From Binging to Broccoli, or I don't know if it was, I think that was the name of the book, From Binging to Broccoli. And the idea is that if you have an eating disorder, you can't just the next day be contented eating broccoli. Maybe you can sustain it for a day or maybe a week or maybe 2 weeks, but it's not going to be long term if you make that big a jump. Wow. Okay. Checking the time. This question is, when does it all end? Oh, I missed a question. Okay, well, I'll go back to that one. It doesn't end exactly. It becomes more refined, I guess we would say. And I really, really believe that for your sanity, it's really important that your teen have a lot of adults in their lives, so that you can pawn them off on somebody else when you need to. But it's not just, I mean, I'm kidding around, but it's not just pawning them off. It's also so that they can learn other skills and so that they can see how other people in the world go through life. And I believe that the more adults that are in your child's life who are willing to take your child under their wing for a short period of time or a long period of time, the better off your teen is. I think that's very, very important. I once asked a friend of mine, because his daughter, whenever I would go visit, it was my best friend's daughter. And whenever I would visit, his daughter would be like very captivated with me, and I was very captivated with her. And I said, does it bother you that she's, like ignoring you when I come to visit? And he was like, no, not at all. The more people she can love, the better off she is, the more full her life. And I said, well, does it bother you that, like, I'm kind of taking your place for a period of time? And he was like, no, the more people that love her, the better. And I just had never thought of it like that. But yeah, it's really important to have, for kids to have mentors. Like I said, it could be a short period of time, it could be a long period of time. How do you get a teen to do what you want them to do? Well, so I do have these classes that really delve deep. One of the things, I mean, I can answer these questions, but at the same time, what I believe about your connection with your child, with your ADHD child, is not just tweak it here, put some wallpaper up, hang a painting here, change the carpet. It's not like a lot of separate kind of actions. It's about laying a foundation or fixing the foundation of the house, basically, if to continue the metaphor. It's important to put a structure in place that won't fall down, that can withstand what teens go through and what people with ADHD go through, and addresses those needs, helps them grow, and honors who they are, as well as honoring who your family is and who you are as parents. So, how do we get them to do what we want them to do? I mean, the simple answer is to figure out what motivates them and do that. But the broader answer and how to get there will be found in those classes on my website under classes, which is to establish a relationship or relationships in your family, like a new way for you to interact as a family. When you're relaxing, when you're on vacation, and when there are, those stresses of everyday life, homework and making dinner and getting them to bed and getting the laundry done and all of those things, something that will withstand all of those different scenarios. Do you know what percentage of teens with ADHD engage in those risky behaviors, and what is the best approach to handling it? Well, I don't know what the percentage is. Some risky behaviors don't look as bad as others. Um, like, um, like one of them looks pretty normal, which is when teens are, or looks, if not normal, it looks like that's a really healthy thing to do. But when teens are very concerned with how many calories they're consuming, what are the macros, what's the percentage of, carb to protein to fat, what is, how many steps did I do, blah, blah, blah. If they're not an athlete, then a lot of that can be, it's called orthorexia, which is described as an unhealthy or addictive relationship with all the behaviors around food, around healthy food and healthy eating and health. So it's like you overdo health. I can't have this extra string bean because I'm only allowed to have 6 ounces of string beans, and this makes it 6 ounces and 3/10. That kind of thing, where you're just very, very caught up in the whole, like you're eating, so you don't have anorexia, and you're not throwing up, so you don't have bulimia, but you're very, very concerned with making sure everything is super healthy. Am I doing this the way it's supposed to be done? And anyway, my point is, no, I don't know the percentage. And 2, this kind of behavior really requires a specialist. Addiction is not something that you can, like, oh crap, like you can resolve with a friend. Like, oh, my child is addicted to vaping. Can you help me, next door neighbor? That's not the way it works. So it's important to go to the child's doctor and talk about it. Like, what do we do? How do we handle this? And check out a psychiatrist or a psychologist to see if it's maybe it's a chemical imbalance, maybe it's um, maybe there's an addiction involved, but but you don't want to just, like, I would never say that I could help you with an addiction, because even though I know a lot about addictions, I don't know very much at all about how to um, resolve an addiction or treat an addiction. Um, and some people will say, well, I don't have, a degree or whatever, but I know a ton about addiction. I would not use them as a substitute for an expert. That's what I'm saying. You can listen to them if you want, but they're not a substitute for an expert. Okay, so, we're on time. Wow. All right, so next steps. So one of the things you can do is to join our really awesome ADHD parenting club. You get tons of valuable information and attention from me for a really surprisingly affordable monthly fee. It's a month-to-month subscription, so to speak, and it's totally in your hands. You can sign up and you can cancel, and that's totally up to you. I can't make you stay or withhold your money or anything like that. You can stay as long as you want. And we also have family coaching, which would be a more intensive coaching than what you're going to sign up for, which is one session. Family coaching is a combination of coaching and between coaching support and sessions, not sessions, but mini sessions, I should say. Maybe something came up and you need to talk, so you call me on the phone, that kind of thing. So coaching is much more, it's a closer relationship. I would say that the parenting club is a close relationship. I feel that way and they feel that way. And family coaching would be a closer relationship. I become your family's advocate. I become, in addition to you, I become extra support. I guide you through steps that you're taking, so that it's like having a trainer teach you a dance or something, and they're doing it with you, or a trainer teaching you about pole vaulting, and they're there with you, coaching you. And your family's involved. So that's another option, and the website is there. So thank you so much for joining me. I've had a really good time. I hope you have gotten a ton of information that you needed and some really good reminders. If you want to contact me, my email address is at the bottom of the slide, and so is my phone number. I welcome any contact. All right, everybody, take care, and thank you again for joining us.